On another matter, Madam President, tomorrow our democracy will face one of its greatest tests in the Senate. On January 7th, at close to 4 o'clock in the morning, this Senate voted to confirm the electoral victory of Joe Biden to be the next president of the United States. But we all know what happened before that vote. An angry, self-pitying man who would not accept defeat, we now know, schemed for weeks about how to overturn the election and to continue his presidency. When Donald Trump's efforts failed and democracy prevailed, he begged a mob to come to Washington and deliver him from reality. You've seen the videos and films, the president standing with the White House in the background, railing to this crowd about an election that was stolen, urging them to come to Capitol Hill and make a difference. He demanded that they come and stop the steal. And then he turned that mob on the Capitol of the United States. Those of us who were here that day will never forget it. The outrageous insurrection that followed was the worst attack on this building and the most prolonged siege of the Capitol since the British attacked our capital in the War of 1812. 5 people died, more than 140 police officers were injured. It could have been worse. Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican, South Carolina, was right when he said the day after the attack, quote, "That mob could have killed us all." The assault on the Capitol left our nation shaken and the world in disbelief that it could happen in America. But it was not what had one group of Washington power peddlers worried the most. These Washington insiders scheduled a private conference call just 2 days after this attack on the Capitol. They were scrambling to come up with a plan to kill a democracy reform bill. The call was organized by the Koch brothers organization. Among the participants was Senator McConnell. A recording of the call found its way to Jane Mayer, an investigative reporter for the New Yorker magazine, who wrote about it. According to Miss Mayer's reporting, the reason the political insiders and special interests on that call were frightened was because they couldn't find a way to beat S1. The Koch brothers group had poll tested every attack they could think of against the bill, and none of it worked. It wasn't just Democrats who liked the reforms in that bill. It turned out the Republicans liked them too. According to a Koch representative who hosted the meeting, quote, "There's a large, very large chunk of conservatives who are supportive of these types of reforms." Surprise, surprise. What's a poor political insider to do when you can't manufacture a reason to vote against a bill? There's only one way to stop it. And what they referred to was under-the-dome strategies to stop this electoral reform bill. You know what that is? That's the filibuster, the kilibuster. That Senate procedure which requires 60 votes. They knew they couldn't win a majority, but they knew that it was tough to come up with 60 votes in favor. And that's what I'm afraid we're going to see tomorrow. I hope not. Last night I watched with many Americans as the movie Selma was televised. It reminded us of what happened in the 1960s when people like my personal friend and a hero to many of us, John Lewis, marched across that bridge in Selma, Alabama, trying to speak up for what? Voting rights for African Americans. He was beaten and bloodied and almost died in the process. But they mustered the strength to come back again and to resume the march. And they prevailed in passing a Voting Rights Act that gave a fighting chance for African Americans and other people to be able to vote in the future of America. This still is a challenge to us today. Why, I don't know. We've seen in the recent past 6 or 7 Republicans publicly break with Donald Trump in some of his more outrageous positions. And yet they have been strangely silent on that side of the aisle when it comes to what is happening in states across the nation, where we have measures taking place that will limit the right of people to vote. What's wrong with this picture? Is a democracy not at its strongest point when more people are participating? And yet, Republican legislatures write bill after bill to limit those who will be able to vote in the future. I want to say a word or two about my colleague, Senator Joe Manchin. I want to thank him for his determined efforts to find a compromise on the bill that's coming before us. Senator Manchin spoke to everyone in sight, Republicans, Democrats, independents, liberals, conservatives, and he listened. The compromise he proposed is not inclusive of everything I'd like to see in the bill, but the reality is that it would be an improvement. It would help address the dangerous all-out assault on voting rights that's taking place in all these states that I mentioned. It could help put Jim Crow back in the grave where he belongs, and it deserves the support of the Senate.